All right. Welcome to you all. Let's get started. If you would please be so kind as to rise. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Ms. Conley?
Here.
Mr. Duncan?
Here.
Ms. Hardy?
Here.
Mr. Lichtenhouse?
Here.
Mr. Snyder?
Here.
Mr. Z?
Here.
Mayor Tarter?
Here.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you, and welcome all of you to this special day. First, I'd like to thank our honor guard at City Police Captain Pilar Uhlman, Sheriff's Deputy Phil Higgs, and Sheriff's Deputy Tom Lohman. Thank you all for coming to our dedication of the new City Council chambers. As you know, this is the first public meeting in our new space, and we're honored to have you all join us here today. We're particularly honored to be joined tonight by our colleagues on the school board and so many other boards and commission members, former elected officials, citizens, and business owners who will use this room to meet and chart the future of this city for years to come. And this room serves as the city's General District Court and Juvenile and Domestic Relations Court as part of the 17th Judicial Circuit of Arlington and the City of Falls Church. We're honored to have members of the judiciary here today, including Chief Judge Francis O'Brien, Presiding Judge Richard McHugh, Judges Jason Rucker and Thomas Kedley, and George Varousas. We have the Real Justice League with us here today. We're honored to be joined by former Mayor Carol DeLong, who served on our City Council for 16 years, with 8 of those years as mayor, from 1980 through 1988. Mayor DeLong oversaw the last expansion of City Hall, which was dedicated in 1982. I understand it's her birthday tomorrow, is that right? All right, is anybody up for singing happy birthday to former Mayor Carol DeLong? Are you ready to do that? All right, let's give it a shot. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Carol. Happy birthday to you. All right. All right, that's the first happy birthday. We got that down here. So we're gathered together in these new council chambers to dedicate this room as our seat of government. In this special place, we'll practice that difficult task that so many through the ages have fought for and dedicated their lives to, the right of self-governance with the deep responsibility that comes with it. The work in this room will be to forge the future of our city. May that work be animated by our love of community and grounded by our respect for the rule of law, enlightened by the will of the people, and tempered by the sound judgment born out of our diverse life experiences. With this gavel, I bring this meeting of City Council to order and invite Mayor DeLong to come forward to make a few remarks. Mayor DeLong?
Thank you, Mayor Tarter. As I recall, the night of my final council meeting after 16 years on the council was scheduled for the evening of my birthday. And I thought that was a fitting birthday present, but I kept it a secret. And I was absolutely furious when we carried over to the next night because we couldn't finish our business on my birthday. But Mayor Tarter and members of the council, Judge McHugh, City Manager Shields, and city employees, congratulations to you for the completion of the new City Hall and on the occasion of its dedication. Also the council chambers and the courtroom. I compliment the architects and builders for their work. Our City Hall is more accessible and welcoming with a central entranceway and the main business counters all visible from the entrance. While public meeting rooms located immediately at the front of the building, it will be easier for our boards and commissions and the members of the public to attend their meetings. While much is new here, the design team preserved many good things as well. City Hall remains beautifully situated in Cherry Hill Park with the community center and the nearby Mary Riley Stiles Library. The pews will continue in service as they have been for more than 50 years. The front table here in front of the dais has been part of the council chambers since the days of the town council, before the city became independent. This space marries the old and new, similar to the community leaders who serve here, who will lead the city into a bright future while keeping the best parts of our past. I congratulate you again on the occasion of the dedication of these new council chambers and wish you Godspeed in your service and leadership of our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And thank you for your extensive service to our community, and we hope you have a great birthday. Next, I would like to invite our Chief Judge up to make some comments. If you would like to do so, we would certainly appreciate it.
Actually decided to defer to my colleague since he has been with this project for all 15 years. And I thought that it was fitting that he could address and tell you how happy we are.
That would be wonderful. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Richard McHugh, and I'm, for the next 3 or 4 days, I will be a judge of the General District Court till my retirement on Friday. Approximately 15 years ago, a court security committee was formed to deal with some significant issues with security in the courtroom in the old facility. That committee consisted of members from the city manager's office, the city attorney's office, police department, sheriff's department, facilities, as well as the court. We, at that time, with the old facility, the council was willing to make the changes that were necessary to improve security, but it couldn't be fully accomplished in that facility. When we became aware that a new facility was being considered, the committee worked again with the city manager's office to try and incorporate within the new facility the security concerns that we had. And fortunately, those have been addressed. And in addition to the security concerns, there were changes that needed to be made to make this a more user-friendly facility for all of the individuals who would come to court. People who come to court are usually not real happy to come to court, so it is best that we can provide them with a facility that both is secure but also is comfortable. And we are pleased that that has been accomplished, and on behalf of all of the members of the Juvenile and Domestic Relations Court and the General District Court, we do thank the mayor and the city council for for all the work that has gone forward to make this into a much better court for all the people, the citizens of Falls Church, who come into this courtroom on a regular basis. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for your service to our community. I don't know if any of the other judges would like to speak. You certainly, any or all of you are welcome to if you're so inclined. If not, I'm going to go ahead and move on. Oh, Judge Verusas, yes.
My name is George Verusas. I'm with the Juvenile and Domestic Relations District Court. And I remember as president of the Arlington Bar Association 30 years ago when we had a celebration at the Cherry Hill House when Arlington welcomed Falls Church City courts into our judicial district. Up until that time, they'd been part of Fairfax County. It made a lot of sense to have Falls Church be a part of Arlington courts because we're closer. We have a lot more in common. And it seemed like a good idea at the time. And it's been a great marriage for over 30 years now. So I've been coming to court here for 21 years. And I look forward to coming to court here again for a little bit longer. My colleague, Judge Robin Robb, and I will be sharing coming to hear family and criminal law cases in this courtroom every other month. And it's as Falls Church is a big-time place, but it has a nice, warm, hometown, small-town feeling, and we appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. Mr. City Manager, do you have anything you wanted to say?
Well, thank you, Mayor Tarter, members of council, Mayor DeLong, Judge McHugh, and members of the judiciary, city employees. On behalf of all the city employees, I want to thank council and I want to thank the taxpayers for this renovation and for this expansion of the Harry Wells Municipal Building. This is a very happy occasion for us. And in the spirit of a happy occasion, I channeled Dave Letterman just a little bit, and I came up with a top 10 list of some things that I think we're all happy about with this new building. So if you'll bear with me, I'll just go through the top 10 list. So, number 10, open floor plans. With cubicles, there can be no government secrets. So we're happy about that. Number 9. No longer will 25% of our workday be spent guiding visitors who are lost in City Hall. Now they can find their way around. Number 8, a roof terrace with a meadow and a view of Cherry Hill Park. Number 7, LEED silver, and the ability to brag about that to our colleagues in Arlington County and Fairfax County. 5, I'm sorry, am I at 6? I was going to cut to the chase. No longer having to rescue victims trapped in the elevator on a weekly basis. Number 5, no longer bumping into attorney-client meetings in their stairwells. Number 4, seat cushions in our pews. I think everybody can appreciate that. Number 3, we can still open our windows. And when they're closed, they actually keep the rain and the wind out. That's a big positive. Number 2, a safe and energy efficient and ADA accessible City Hall for everyone. And last, number 1, at long last, you can actually enter through the front door of City Hall. And as a bonus, we get to see Dave Bjerke every time you do walk into the front door of City Hall, and that's a great thing. So in all seriousness, we are very grateful for this investment in our City Hall, which also serves as our police station and our 911 dispatch center and our courtroom. And it's very rare to have all these functions combined in one building. And as a consequence, this building is truly a 24/7, 364-day-a-year building. Our police and dispatch are here through the night. The employees arrive at 7 a.m. and the building opens to the public at 8 a.m. and public meetings occur here every night of the week, late into the night. This is, I believe, the most active building in the City of Falls Church, and the lights are always on. So thank you to our task force who helped guide us through the design process and through the public decision-making process for this building. Thank you to all our city employees for your perseverance and resilience in moving twice over the past year. Our project management team, our hat's off to you, and you know who you are, but Cindy, Mike, Lionel, Jamal, our principal leaders in this project, Chief Gavin, there's so many to name, and I think there'll be more recognitions for you, but thank you for your leadership in this project. We're looking forward to our police moving back very soon and courts being back in this building this summer. We're also very grateful to Arlington County Sheriff Beth Arthur and for the court system in Arlington for your hospitality while we've had General District Court there during our construction period. So my main comments are thank you.
All right, well, my main comment back to you is thank you as well, so we greatly appreciate it. So each of the members on council has had, I think, a special role in this project. Each brings their own expertise and their own interests and skills to the City Hall project. And so we're going to hear briefly from each of the members on council. And we're going to start with Ms. Hardy. Councilwoman Hardy?
Great, thank you, Mayor. So today's very much a momentous day, so congratulations to everyone in the community for a greener, safer, more accessible City Hall. I think I'm proud to be one of the first speaking in the new center of our government. I think this is a result of many years of hard work and represents a big achievement in our ambitious capital investment across the city. And speaking of ambitious capital investment, my job tonight is introduce our school board partners who are here tonight with us, whom we worked collaboratively, especially the past few years, on big capital planning as well. I think we've had a big milestone year in Falls Church with the opening of Mount Daniel this year, the groundbreaking of the new high school just a couple weeks ago, and now opening City Hall tonight. And I think I see in the audience representing the school board tonight, Aaron Gill, the chair, Greg Anderson, our vice chair, Shannon Litton. Is there anyone I've missed? If y'all would stand. So we look forward to sharing the use of the chambers with you all. And so when you all have your meeting on Tuesday night, we hope you'll enjoy the space as well. Look forward to many more years of collaborative budget seasons in this very room. But in closing, I was told I have to make some motherly remarks. And so what I always say to my kids are two things. One is sharing is caring. So we are sharing this space, and that means we care. And the other thing I always tell my kids is to put your toys away when you're done so everyone else can enjoy the space. So, thank you.
All right, our next speaker is Councilmember Lichtenhouse.
Thank you, Mayor Tarter. So I'm often asked by friends and family how I like this job serving on city council and representing the city and community of Falls Church. And for me, it's an easy answer and one that really comes from the heart. And that is, outside of being a husband and a father, serving as a councilman is the single most purposeful job that I have ever had. The long hours, difficult decisions are worth any amount of stress, overtime, and sleepless nights that we have here. Sitting here tonight and having had the opportunity to dedicate a cornerstone this afternoon, an unveiling of new City Hall is just one of the examples of the types of concrete advancement that I feel that I personally can contribute, as others do, to make this job worth it. Having the opportunity to help shape our city's future in this role is one of the greatest honors of my life, truly. But I'm not alone. And I know that many in the audience who are here that have contributed many more countless hours, blood, sweat, and tears, planning, building, supporting, and volunteering in this community. I imagine that many of them feel the same way that I do, a sense of purpose. And it's an honor to serve this community, and it's an honor to preside over and help shepherd some of the biggest decisions and projects our city has undertaken since its founding. Tonight, I have the pleasure of introducing and welcoming just one of many groups of citizens that give their hearts and passion to moving this city forward, helping plan and build the next City Hall, the next commercial development, and the next small area plan. Tonight, I'd like to recognize my colleagues on the Planning Commission. A few are here representing that body. I see Melissa Teets and Tim Stevens here. Is there anyone else from the Planning Commission? Thank you, guys. So thank you to all of you present and absent from the Planning Commission for what you have and will continue to contribute in building a better future for Falls Church. And I think it's also appropriate, given that we have recently dedicated a cornerstone for our newly renovated City Hall, to personally and individually recognize one Planning Commission member in particular who unfortunately could not be here. My friend and neighbor, Lindy Hockenberry, still requires recognition, even though she's absent tonight. I think it goes without saying that Lindy epitomizes what it means to be selfless, purpose-driven volunteer on behalf of our city. She was an inspiration personally for me as I contemplated my own run for council, and she continues to serve as one of the greatest examples of what it means to truly be a humble servant leader in the City of Falls Church. I, for one, look up to her and the tremendous work she's done while serving on the Planning Commission with her colleagues. And as her time on the commission wraps up here in the next few months, I want to say to her and countless others who have come before me, thank you, a hearty thank you. And to the Planning Commission and all of the other dedicated citizen volunteers on boards and commissions, our meeting tonight, this dedication in these chambers are just one small reflection of your contribution and what all of us can strive to achieve as we dedicate our efforts to strengthening our community and building the next generation in Falls Church. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And our next council member is Councilmember Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was my privilege to be the council's designated representative to the City Hall Task Force, the group of staff members who worked laboriously for years to bring us where we are tonight. I would appreciate it. I know that a number of you who are in the room here were on the task force or at least attended some meeting at some point over the last 18 months where we talked about this building. I wonder if the members of the City Hall Task Force and anyone else fitting the description of having attended a planning meeting for City Hall could please stand and be recognized. Thank you all. I think that what we see is the fruit of your labors. You know, there's still some things that are going to be worked on here at City Hall. I know work is still going in some areas, but this is a great debut. I did want to say a couple of people who are not here who came to mind when I was out in the reception area looking at the plaques on the wall. A fellow who was on the City Hall Task Force and contributed mightily to it was Gary Laporta. And I think we should all pause and reflect about his service to our community. You know, we lost Gary in February. It would have been nice for him to have been able to see the building, but hopefully we can carry forward with the spirit that he always served in. A very substantive and serious person who was also a barrel of fun and just a great cheerleader for our city. And also, the judge mentioned that this project had been underway for at least 15 years, which takes us back to the time when Dan McKeever was our city manager. Dan left us in 2006, unfortunately. And I wonder if I might just ask for a moment of silence for Dan McKeever and Gary Laporta as we gather here tonight. Thank you. I wanted to say what a special honor it is for me to be able to share a program with my mother-in-law, Carol DeLong. I've been on council 7 years, and I finally have reached the pinnacle moment. So thank you, Carol, for being here tonight. When the cornerstone was laid in 1982, I had just met your daughter, Leslie. So it's been a little while. It's been a great time. And it's an honor to have you and Chet, who most of you know is the longest-serving library board member in the history of the Western Hemisphere. And will be carrying us forward on the library project, which will be our next big civic moment. This evening is a dream come true for me, born out of a bit of a nightmare, because when I took office 7 years ago, the first thing that I heard was that the situation was so untenable for the courts that if council didn't get on with it, we were going to be held in contempt of court. And as much as I love Dave Tarter, I was elected with him 7 years ago, I just didn't really want to share a jail cell with Dave Tarter. So that got my attention. And fortunately, all my colleagues pulled together, and then in a time when the economy was improving and the city's ambitions were increasing, we were able to include the City Hall project in a long list of good things that we're doing for our community and our citizenry. And I just want to thank the judicial folks for their patience, and I hope that you feel that it's paid off with a facility that, as you said, honors and respects all citizens and administers justice and civic good deeds that we all hope will carry us far into the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we move on to Councilman Snyder, I just wanted to recognize Judge Robin Robb, who presiding judge of J&DR Court in Arlington, who was not recognized earlier. So thank you for being here with us this evening. All right. All right, our next council member is Councilman Snyder.
So thank you very much. It's certainly appropriate that we celebrate this new facility for its aesthetics and its ability to enhance our service to the public. But the fact of the matter is that a lot of this project was literally driven by public safety issues and concerns. I'd like to have every person who works in any way with the judiciary, with law enforcement, with the prosecutor's office, to please stand and be recognized. Thank you very much. I have to say this about Chief Gavin. In addition to being a great police chief, she's also a very effective lobbyist. She and Cindy, when I raised some questions about this project, she and Cindy did a special meeting with me, and after that, there was no question as to which way I was going to vote. So thank you very much for your dedication to our community, you and Cindy especially, our dedication to the community and to the larger issue of public safety. So each July 4, our community gathers to read the Fairfax Resolves, the Declaration of Independence, and the preamble to the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. For those who have not attended that community reading, it's one of the most meaningful ways to celebrate the 4th of July. There are a number of common threads in these documents, and one of them is that we institute government to provide for the public safety. I'm going to read a couple excerpts. First, the Fairfax Resolves. Resolve that the most important and valuable part of the British Constitution, upon which its very existence depends, is the fundamental principle of the people's being governed by no laws to which they have not given their consent, by representatives freely chosen by themselves who are affected by the laws they enact equally with their constituents, to whom they are accountable and whose burden they share, in which consists the safety and happiness of the community. Preamble to the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. And finally, the preamble to the Constitution. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. So, in the absence of leadership at the federal and state level, it falls to us at the local level to deal with the issue of public safety. And believe me, this building is a commitment to that, what I view to be the first priority of government. It always has been and always will be my first commitment as long as I'm here. For it can safely be said that any government that fails to provide for the public safety fails. This community has not failed, and we will not fail, and this building is a commitment to that end. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Council Member Z.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Would not surprise you to know that I'm going to talk about what it means to be green, and this building in particular. This building originally was born at a time when the word environmental sustainability was an unknown concept. And since then, we have a pretty much woke population. The citizens of the city have insisted that we insert into our strategic plan one of the pillars that speaks to how we look at the environment, how we look at ourselves and our place on this planet. And I'm really happy to report that we finally have achieved a government building in this city that's not obsolete from the moment you open the front doors for business for the first time. So I'm not going to ask anyone to stand up here, but I think we should all pat ourselves on the back for giving freely of our opinions, our thoughts, and our tax dollars to make sure this happens, and for being here tonight as well. What does it mean to have a LEED Silver designation? Well, it's a bunch of numbers. It's one of various certifications you can get. I could go on about all the things that will make your eyes roll, but I won't. What it means is that the walls will not be cold when you bump up against them in the wintertime. What it means is they won't be hot because of the sun beating down on them from the southern exposure. It means that if you are in the courtroom or in a meeting, there's sensors that will tell you whether there are a lot of people in the room, and will put more oxygen into the room. So if you fall asleep in the courtroom, it's not because of lack of air. So all these things work to the good, and even better if they're in a beautiful building, and there's really no reason why you cannot have aesthetics combined with all the virtues that we hold dear with regard to environmental sustainability. So I salute all of you. I salute council for supporting these, and for all the citizens that at one point we thought that, well, the question was, can we afford to do that? And of course, we know the answer is, can we afford not to? Thank you so much.
And our next speaker is Vice Mayor Mary Beth Conley.
Thank you, Mayor. It falls to me to talk about some of the history in this room that has been made and that will be made. So as you look around, as you came into the chamber, you passed by the quilt that commemorates the bicentennial of the Bill of Rights, and that was made in 1992 by the Falls Church chapter of Quilters Unlimited. Also out in the entranceway is the original charter of the City of Falls Church from 1948. Along this wall, you see Thomas Jefferson. You don't see George Mason, but he's hiding behind that screen. James Madison and George Washington. And those 4 portraits were donated to the city by the Village Preservation and Improvement Society to mark its 100th anniversary in 1985. 2 of the portraits went up in 1985, and then it took 8 years to raise the funds to put the other 2 portraits up. And they are authorized copies of the work of C. Gregory Stapko. And those portraits are in other places in the Washington, D.C. area and around the country. But if you look around behind you, you will see that there are lots of blank spaces on these walls and those walls. And as a city council and as a city, we know that there's a lot more history than just these 4 men on the walls. So we would like to, going forward, put together a process to include women and people of color and people who did things other than just found the country, because there's a lot of history in the City of Falls Church, and we'd like to be able to recognize a lot more people. So Corey Janicelli, who works in Cherry Hill Farmhouse, is going to lead the process in the coming months, and we're going to identify who will be on those walls, and we hope that there's a lot of community input into that so that our courtroom and our chambers will reflect our entire community.
Thank you. All right. All right, I'm going to wrap up with a few comments of my own. One, again, thank you all for coming out to join us on this special occasion. This is another example of investment in our community and our city's future. As you probably heard earlier, we're in the midst of the greatest period of capital investment in the history of this city. In addition to City Hall, we've got the new high school, which we just broke ground on just a couple weeks ago. It's $120 million. We've got renovations in Mount Daniel and TJ that have also just been recently completed, and the library, which is about to get started. All the while, we've got the steady drumbeat of improvements and things we're doing here in the city, sidewalks, streets, the whole 9 yards. So this is a really exciting period in our city's history. Renovation of this building was long overdue. It was old and it was dilapidated. It lacked security for our courts and our employees. It lacked needed technology. It lacked environmental sustainability and design for the modern era. It was also not as accessible as it should have been. And frankly, it just wasn't a great place for people to work. So this renovation changes all of that. I'd like to thank a few of the folks who made this project possible. First and foremost, Cindy Messner. Where's Cindy? Why don't you stand up, Cindy? Cindy was a tornado, a driving force in this project, and it took many, many years to get this thing off the ground, and Cindy was there for every minute of it, fighting hard for it, so we appreciate the great work you've done. Also, our city manager, Wyatt Shields, and the rest of our city leadership. Todd Ray of Page Architecture, is he here in the room? I thought I saw him earlier today. Is he taken off? But very exciting, I think, design, kind of combining the old with the new. We've got the windows here, but the brick wall from the former exterior of this building, for example. Mitch Flipowitz from HIT Construction, is he here as well? Anyway, I'd like to thank him and all the tradesmen and tradeswomen who worked on this project. Mike Whitfield, is Mike here? All right, stand up. Mike's with the Director of Public Works, and Lionel Marlar, our project manager for the city. I don't know if he's here as well. All right, there you go. Congratulations. Phil Duncan, who spent a great deal of time on the city task force. Phil, there he is, and also the rest of the members of the task force. Jerry McDonald, who I think I saw. Are you back there? Yeah, why don't you stand up? Jerry is, I guess, originally from Scotland and is an incredible craftsman who helped rebuild the table that's in front of us, which is, I don't know how many years, 50, 60, 70 years old. He rebuilt that table. He also built the stand for the flags, I think from a native white oak tree that fell during a storm near his house. So it's got a lot of history to it. That stand behind me was handmade by Jerry McDonald, who works in our building safety division. So hats off to you. Fantastic job. Jim Snyder, Doug Fraser, and Paul Stoddard. I don't know if any of them are here at the moment, but the rest of staff who oversaw this project from planning and permitting. Our judge, our judiciary staff, we greatly appreciate your patient advocacy for this project. And Jamal Matthews, who's there in the very back, for your work on IT in the building. Genevieve Lamas, I don't know, is Genevieve here still? All right, there you go. With Falls Church TV for installing the work, the TV components and the like. Mayor DeLong, thank you for your longtime service to the community and that of your husband, Chet. You guys have been around forever and still cooking, so we greatly appreciate it. Finally, this council chamber is a special room for our community. The work that's done here, the decisions that are made here, are far more important than the room itself. However, we have a welcoming and attractive place, accessible to the public, with artwork and artifacts that speak to our history and our hope and belief in the future. It all serves to increase the odds that decisions made here will be made fairly, wisely, and in the public interest. And with that spirit of improvement and progress that has guided us so far in our history as an independent city. That is why we, as a community, decided for this investment in our civic space. I'm confident this investment will bear dividends for many years. Finally, thank you to all the taxpayers and citizens of Falls Church. This building is to serve you, and we hope that all the decisions that are made in this chambers will be for the betterment of our community. Thank you all for attending this dedication. After a 10-minute break, we're going to begin with business on the agenda. So thank you all for coming out. We greatly appreciate it. All right, good evening to you all. I think we're ready to reconvene our regular city council meeting. Let's get started, I guess, with the business on the agenda. Do we have a motion regarding the meeting agenda?
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt the meeting agenda.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstentions, the ayes have it. Are there any proclamations and special presentations? There are indeed. I can see myself. We've got our own delegate, Marcus Simon, who's here to recognize the service of some of our employees. So we're delighted to have him with us this evening.
Thank
Delegate
you, Mr.
Simon.
Mayor, members of council. So it's great to be here tonight as you guys dedicated your new facility. And these are length of service awards, and we've got a couple of folks that served 25 and one that served 30. And I feel even, more, excited about giving these awards. And I didn't realize what a big accomplishment it was until I heard about all the really harsh conditions they had to endure for those 25 and 30 years in the old building, hearing about how rough things were. So the fact they endured that, although I don't know if they all work here in the facility. But it's great actually to be here tonight. We're celebrating the physical plant and the great opportunities that creates for the city to also celebrate the people that work within and the length of time that they've worked here. I love doing this every year, coming back and doing these length of service awards. It really is what makes the city a special place. These are our problem solvers. These are the people that when you show up at the library and you need something quickly and you don't know where to find it because you're lost, they guide you and make sure you find the way. Folks that make sure that when you're confused about how to fill out your tax forms, they bring some clarity to that and get you pointed in the right direction, and all those great things that we sort of count on and often take for granted. And they've been doing it for years. And the other thing that's sort of remarkable about this group, and there were more that weren't here, but the group that's here, it's what they all have in common is they started, I don't want to say at the bottom, but they started right at the very beginning, right? We have two folks that started as administrative secretaries and another one that was a library assistant one. So I think if you had a pay grade, they were at the very beginning of it. I won't say the bottom, but the very beginning of it, and they've managed to work their way up. And it shows the city's commitment to promoting from within, that you find talented people, whatever job they start out doing, that's not necessarily where they'll finish their careers, and everybody has an opportunity within Falls Church City to move up, and if they're good at their job and they understand the subject matter, they have an opportunity to have a long career in that field and contributing the best way they can. So I think it's really exciting to be here. And so with that, and without any further ado, I think our first recipient is Leslyn Barrow. Am I saying that right? So if you guys will indulge me for just a minute, I'm going to read some of this, not all of it. And you had all of it to read, though, at your leisure. So whereas Leslyn Barrow, a housing specialist within the City of Falls Church, has served the residents of the community for more than 25 years. Whereas Leslyn began her career with the City of Falls Church as administrative secretary on August 18th, 1993. I was trying to figure out what some members of council might have been doing in 1993. I think maybe junior high school, I'm not sure. And was promoted to a housing specialist in 2006. What did I say? Oh, housing. Oh, did it say housing? We'll fix it. Oh, it's okay. And whereas in 2013, Leslyn received the Employee of the Year Award, congratulations, for her compassion, dedication, and grace in managing difficult situations, being jointly nominated by the Housing and Human Services and Housing Commission and the Human Services Advisory Council and the Friends of Falls Church Homeless Shelter and the Falls Church Zoning Inspector. So you have multiple nominations to that in 2013. And you've received many other awards and commendations for your work with the Ellison Resources Center, participation in Fall for Fun outreach, and efforts to help other departments with translations. And whereas you're committed to your own professional development, and whereas in the course of your duties, you've inspired confidence and hope in the city's most vulnerable residents through your kindness, empathy, and passion for service. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the House of Delegates, the Senate concurring, that the General Assembly hereby commend Leslyn Barrow for her 25 years of service as a member of Falls Church Housing and Human Services, and be it resolved further that the Clerk of the House of Delegates prepare this copy of the resolution for a presentation to you as an expression of the General Assembly's admiration for your contributions to the Falls Church community, and it's patroned by myself and Senator Sasslaw. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me know if you need to fix any feedback. Okay? All right, thank you very much. All right. Next, we have Esther Pavia. Am I saying that right? All right. Come on up. So Esther started her career as a library assistant. Am I got that right? Yes. I've got to check now. I'm going to ask this more like questions than statements. Library assistant with the City of Falls Church, and you've served the residents of the community for more than 25 years. Whereas you joined the Mary Riley Stiles Public Library in Falls Church on July 6th, almost 26 years. We just made it as a 25-year award. July 6, 1993, as a part-time employee, bringing your unique background in library science and music, as well as fluency in 3 languages. Whereas over the years, Esther Pavia has become a full-time employee, serving in a variety of roles, including Library Assistant 1, Office Assistant, and Library Assistant 2, has assisted with the operation of the computer system, curated and cataloged the library's music collection, and currently manages the magazine collection. And whereas in 2000, Esther received the Performance Award for taking on additional duties in the absence of a library director and subsequently helping the new director become acclimated to Mary Riley Stiles Public Library. And whereas you are a loyal and dedicated employee who's committed to the accuracy in your work, goes above and beyond to serve library patrons and share your wealth of knowledge with visitors. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the House of Delegates, the Senate concurring, that the General Assembly hereby commend Esther Pavia for her 25 years of service to the City of Falls Church at Mary Riley Stiles Public Library, which is, again, soon to go through a renovation of its own. We'll see. We'll get you back here and see how you like it when you do your 30-year recognition. And resolve further that the Clerk of the House of Delegates prepare a copy of this resolution for presentation as an expression of our admiration the General Assembly's admiration for your contributions to the Falls Church community. Congratulations. All right, congratulations. Thanks a lot. Thank you. And finally, tonight, we have Deborah Gee. Am I saying that right? Is it Gee or G? Deborah Gee. Come on, come closer. All right, so whereas Deborah Gee, a planning specialist for the City of Falls Church, has served the residents of the community for more than 30 years, and whereas Deborah began working with the City of Falls Church on August 15th, 1988, as an administrative secretary for the Economic Development Office, and was first nominated for Employee of the Year 2 years later. So came on in 1988, was 2 years later, was already being nominated as Employee of the Year, and whereas Deborah won the Employee of the Year award in 1994, for using her many administrative skills to help the downsized planning department continue to provide exceptional services. Reading between the lines there. And whereas Deborah has regularly volunteered to assist other departments, receiving commendations from the City Arborist, Recreation and Parks Department, and the Economic Development Authority for her generosity with her time and leadership. And whereas committed to her lifelong learning and professional development, Deborah has received certificates in customer service, administration, communication, and business writing from accredited entities such as George Mason University, the Business Women's Training Institute, and AT&T. And whereas Deborah Gee has been a trusted mentor and friend to our fellow city employees, providing invaluable knowledge about the community, its residents, and local history. Now therefore be it resolved by the House of Delegates, the Senate concurring, that the General Assembly hereby commend Deborah Gee for her 30 years of service to the City of Falls Church as a planning specialist. And be resolved further that we prepare this copy of the resolution for a presentation to you as an expression of our admiration for your contributions to the Falls Church community. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you. You're very welcome. All right. Thank you so much. All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, members of council. Again, it's been my privilege to be here with you tonight, and thank, of course, these very dedicated public servants for their years of service to the City of Falls Church.
All right, thank you so much, and thank you especially to our employees. We greatly appreciate your great service to our community. And thank you, Delegate Simon, for coming out today.
Mr. Mayor, do you want to invite the employees up for a picture?
Absolutely, I think that's a great idea. Let's do
And,
that.
Delegate
And of
Simon.
course, it's all-
All right, well, let's figure it out. Let's try this for now.
All right, are there any oaths of office to administer, Madam Clerk?
I do not believe so.
All right, let's move on to public comment.
All right. Would you like to hear the summary of written comments?
Probably, yes.
Oh, okay. Allison Brown of 706 Poplar Drive submitted comments on the housing chapter of the comprehensive plan. The Human Services Advisory Council wrote in support of increased tax relief for seniors and the disabled. Sandra Tarpinian, 105 Great Falls Street, asked the council to postpone action on the amendment to the Exotic Animals Code section. Peter M. Mecca, Ph.D., wrote to oppose the amendment to the Exotic Animals Code section. Naomi Goodwin also wrote to oppose the amendment. I did receive also something you haven't received yet from Stacy Evers, 819 Fulton Avenue, and she also asked that you make no change to the current Exotic Animals Code section. And then we had correspondence from Sam Butler of 132 Spring Court and asked the council for action on climate change.
All right, thank you very much. We're now going to move on to receipt of public comment. I've received several public comment speaker slips right now, but if you would like to speak and you haven't filled out a speaker slip, you're certainly welcome to do so. Where are we keeping our speaker slips these days? In the room
The
outside?
table in the outer
All
room.
right, so if you guys do want, if anyone does want to speak and you haven't filled out a slip, that's where the slips are. Hand them to the clerk, she will hand them to me. You'll have 3 minutes to speak, and if you could state your name and address for the record when you come on up, that'd be most appreciated. Our first speaker is Benyamin Hassan, did I pronounce your name correctly? Close? Oh, Benjamin, I'm so sorry, all right. Welcome, thanks for coming out.
My name is Benjamin Hassan, 112 Birch Street, apartment B4, zip code 22046. I have just graduated from 5th grade at Thomas Jefferson Elementary School, and I'm here to talk to you about the recent, I don't know if it's recently, but maybe recently proposed change to the Falls Church City Code of exotic animals as pets. The recent proposal to change the city code to allow exotic animals as pets, such as hedgehogs, chinchillas, hermit crabs, and turtles/tortoises, is very bad for multiple reasons. One, their poor treatment, both during capture, transport, and homes. During capture, they are often caught in nets, or sometimes turtles and hermit crabs, people just sometimes reach into water and grab them by hand. During transport, oftentimes they are kept in terrible conditions, often stacked on top of each other, or with no food for the plane ride, with no air conditioning as well. And during in homes, hermit crabs are often given the incorrect amount of food, the incorrect type of food, and are poisoned by by chemicals in the water and paint just everywhere. Speaking of turtles, transitions, in turtle farms, I guess, antibiotics are used very frequently to treat things, as in their bites often give salmonella, but there have been discovered antibiotic-resistant strains of salmonella coming from said farms. Also, the wild populations of said animals is rapidly dwindling where they are native and rapidly increasing where they are invasive species, such as around the urban area of Falls Church. Invasive species such as non-native turtles are killing wildlife and starting feral populations where they compete with native species for food and shelter. Or speaking of which, hedgehogs, chinchillas and hermit crabs, mostly after their owners find that they are actually much harder to keep than they had been told or assumed, often just abandon them into the wild, either letting them die or causing more of the problems. Bye.
You can finish up. You got another. We'll give you a little bit of extra time. Okay, you're doing a great job.
Or join the wild feral populations of said animals, or it's adding to the problems that I spoke about earlier. Benjamin Hassan, signing off.
You want a pen? Nice job, honey. I tell you what, why don't we, Madam Clerk, you want to hand him? I'm sorry, you want to hand up? All right, nice job. That was very articulate and very impressive. Our next speaker is Naomi Goodwin. Did I pronounce that correctly? All right, thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity to provide comment tonight. I've already provided written comment to you all, and my thoughts are similar to my son's, who's just spoken. Further to what I wrote, however, my understanding is that the council have taken reports prepared by other councils into consideration from the Greater Washington area And of the ones that read of those, my concern was that they placed more emphasis on hedgehog and chinchilla release, and there was little emphasis, I thought, on turtles and tortoises. And I'm hoping that the council has taken more consideration, or taken into consideration comments from other marine biologists, ecologists, and freshwater ecologists in particular, and looked more broadly than just the greater Washington area at issues particularly relating to the release of animals into the wild. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. All right, our next speaker is Craig Day. Welcome. Let's try that one, yep.
Good evening and congratulations again. It's great to see Carol DeLong here earlier. My name is Craig Day, 2940 Bridgehampton Court in Falls Church, Fairfax County, Falls Church. Used to live in the city. I just wanted to bring to your attention a request for help. Speaking of time capsules, we're trying to find the city of Falls, we're trying to find Fairfax-owned Falls Church High School's time capsule and Cornerstone. Falls Church High School was torn down in 1995. We had a great big celebration for TJ, TJ meaning the high school, the old Jefferson High School, Falls Church High School, Whittier, and apparently the contents are nicely stored in Mary Riley styles, but we can't find the copper box that was the time capsule itself, nor the cornerstone that says May 15th, 1945. I've just recently today, like 5 hours ago, talked to the people that really know what's going on, your clerk, and so they are now looking at it. But for the last couple of weeks, I've checked with the Virginia Room, Mr. Principal Hill over at George Mason. They're still looking at it, looking for it around there possibly. Falls Church News Press back in 1995 reported that it would be stored up at George Mason High School, which, so anyway, it'd be helpful to find that because Falls Church High School, the Fairfax County School, is going to be having its 75th anniversary this coming school year, and it'd be great to have that back. And that's my short and sweet request. Please help me find the copper box and also the cornerstone so we can put it into good use.
All right, that sounds like a great, Vice Mayor Connolly's got something to say. We're going to do all we can to help you. But Vice...
I'm just wondering, when you say a copper box, how big?
It was this big. I have a picture of it too. I actually gave to the city clerk this afternoon.
Okay.
It's just this big. This ball. It's nothing large. Marshall hasn't never seen it over at the Virginia Room. I've been tracking it wherever I can, but I think you guys might have a good, hopefully have an idea.
We have some ideas, and we're going to look into those as soon as we get through this.
Yes, no, it's like, and if I may add, the only people missing here is Mr. English, Lou, Olam, maybe, and Leonard McCloskey. If you can remember, good old, some fine people that spoke at this here podium over there.
All right, thank you very much. Our last speaker is Paul Boson and Hannah Jordan. Come on down.
Good evening. I'm Paul Boson from 605 Fulton Avenue here in Falls Church.
And I'm Hannah Jordan from 414 Lincoln Avenue.
And so thank you very much for welcoming us here this evening. We're appearing and speaking on behalf of Welcoming Falls Church. You may recall about 1 year ago, you all honored us with a proclamation declaring the middle of September, the week of September 16th last year as Welcoming Week here in Falls Church. Today, just wanted to mention a couple of things by way of updating you about what's happening with our movement. Wanted first to emphasize and make sure that everybody understands that Welcoming Falls Church is part of something bigger. This is part of a broader national movement, to encourage communities around the country to become more welcoming to immigrants and refugees. Nationally, there were over 2,000 activities in 400 different communities during Welcoming Week, which is the big events of the fall, last year. So this is not just Falls Church. This is something bigger. And I think it's uniquely suited to our community, though. If you think about the reaction of council, your declaration at the end of May of this month of June as Immigrant Heritage Month, the reception in the community is just has been very strong, to what we're doing and thinking about. Next, wanted to call your attention to coming up this fall. Welcoming Week will again be hopefully a big set of activities for us. And I wanted to tell you about one specific activity tonight. And that is an effort, we're trying to bring an author named Mbolo Mbui here, to Falls Church for a series of public events in September. Who is Mbolo Mbui and why would we invite her? She's a Cameroonian author. She's the author of a book called Behold the Dreamers, which is considered one of the best contemporary accounts of the immigrant experience. It's a PEN/Faulkner Award winner, an Oprah pick, and she's very well suited to speaking because it happens that she spent time and lived in Falls Church. She was inspired to write the book here. We think it would uniquely resonate with the community. We know about probably 60 or 70 people, at least in the community, have read the book. Falls Church Public School Superintendent Peter Noonan has recommended it to the community in his year-end message to parents and staff. So this is coming soon this fall, and with the permission of the city attorney, we'd actually like to give you a gift, each of you, as a recommended summer read, the book Behold the Dreamers. So if that's permitted at the end, we'll do that. So I'll wrap up with that. Hannah, do you have a few words?
Yeah, hi, I'm Hannah Jordan, and I've had the great privilege of becoming involved with Welcoming Falls Church over the last month and a half or so, something like that. So pretty new to it, but I've been a member of the community since 1994. And so I've been around long enough to see some pretty big changes in our city and the greater Falls Church area, most of which are really great, but also some of them give me pause, like how are we going to maintain our sense of inclusivity? How are we going to, with rising housing and land prices, how are we going to keep making people feel welcome in our community? So when I found out that there was this organization, it's like, I want to be involved in that. I also feel like it's so important for our children to see that we're including people from all walks of life, that we're welcoming them into our community, that our schools are filled with some diversity and inclusivity. And anyway, these are some of the reasons that I joined this, I don't know if I should call it an organization yet, this movement or whatever. And also just to follow up on what Paul said, Welcoming Week coincides quite nicely with the Falls Church Fall Festival, which will be held, as you know, on Saturday, September 14th. And we're working on, with getting the author Mbolo Mbui here, we're working on also having a book signing in conjunction with Mary Riley Stiles Library. We're also doing co-sponsoring an author signing event, and I think there was one other thing. But anyway, several events planned for that day. We're still working on it, but she's wanting to come, so we're just kind of working out some of the nuts and bolts. But anyway, everyone can become involved in this. If people can just smile and listen and demonstrate a caring attitude towards newcomers, especially to immigrants and to refugees in our greater area, that's all it takes sometimes. And we thank you for being a welcoming City Council and your ideas of having, Mary Beth, of telling us about having different portraits and other symbols of inclusivity in our community, and we really appreciate that. Okay, thanks. And Phil Duncan gets a special book, my used copy.
All right, thank you all. Thanks for the books, and thank you for your good work in our community. Mr.
And
Snyder?
Mr. Mayor, let me just recognize Hannah Jordan for her long work as part of the emergency homeless shelter and everyone involved with that. So, Hannah, thank you very much for that work as well.
Thank you.
All right, those are our last speakers, at least that have filled out speaker slips. So we're going to move on to council requests. Are there any council requests at this time? Mr. Snyder and then Councilwoman Hardy.
Sure. I don't know if it's really a request, but I just want to note with great pride and appreciation the work of our newspaper editor, Nick Benton, and the program that he put together yesterday. It was really a phenomenal program with people telling amazing stories, so thank you, Nick, for that. I think it's a classic example of how our community works together and how many folks actually contribute to making this a great community. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Hardy.
Thank you. I was actually going to say the same thing. So thank you to both Ms. Jordan and Mr. Boson and Mr. Benton. I think you all are the best of Falls Church, and you make us really special. So thank you. I did have a pretty tactical request for Mr. Shields. I heard a citizen concern about something about 2020 being the date of when we will get the Hillwood and Annandale signal light pole. I don't think we had last gotten that update in council, so if you have an update now, that would be great. I was a little concerned about that being pretty far out, and so hopefully we have a good interim solution if that is what it has to be.
We'll have a temporary solution that will be installed, I think, within a month. The contractor that is installing the signal has done some things that that will not pass a safety inspection. And that is now subject to a discussion with that contractor and additional delays. We believe we'll get that resolved shortly. And I think we're going to then need to turn our attention to what a permanent fix would be for a fully pedestrian-oriented intersection. And we do anticipate that that will take a longer time. That had always been the plan. But this construction contract has been troublesome due to some technical issues.
So the temporary solution, the new temporary solution will be better than what's there currently?
Yeah, the little arm that's there right now will be replaced with a pole and a suspended signal, but that will not be the long-term solution.
Got it. And will we open up the sidewalk again?
Yes.
Okay. I think we've had a lot of great improvements north of Broad, but I want to make sure south of Broad gets the same love as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Z?
I would like to thank the city for, and especially the leadership of Councilperson Letty Hardy for ensuring that, I don't know what we call it, the last stretch of sidewalk. I think it's pretty much complete. At least it works for me and my dog, and you know, dogs know where to go, so he automatically trots up the brick sidewalk with great alacrity, and so it's all good. Thank you so much.
All right, any other comments? Okay, if not, let's move on to the report of the city manager, Mr. Shields.
Thank you, Mayor Tarter, members of council. I don't actually have items to report tonight, just with all the preparation for the City Hall project, and so I will pass on my report tonight.
All right. Well, thank you for that, I guess. Let's move on to business on the agenda. Madam Clerk, will you call the first item?
Yes, sir. We have a second reading for TO 19-07, ordinance to amend Chapter 4, Section 4-3 of the City Code of the City of Falls Church to allow certain animals to be kept as pets in the city.
All right, Mr. Shields.
Thank you, Mayor Tarter, members of council. What is before council for second reading is an amendment to the City Code ordinance, which regulates the keeping of wild or exotic animals. And specifically, what is being amended is to add turtles, tortoises, hermit crabs, to animals that would be exempt from the definition of wild or exotic animals, which are prohibited. In addition, hedgehogs and chinchillas also would be added to the list of allowed pets. This was discussed at work session and then discussed extensively at first reading. As the council is aware, the staff recommendation is to make no changes to the ordinance. And you heard at first reading our animal warden, Becky Keenan, and the police chief that provide background on that recommendation. But you also heard that there was a petition that had been received, and in our interaction with the petitioners, we always noted that the council would be the final decider on this. The language that was proposed is effectively a compromise that was responsive to the petition. But again, the staff recommendation is no changes to the ordinance. Ms. Keenan is here tonight, and the police chief is here tonight, and we're not planning to give a big presentation because we did that at first reading, but we're certainly here for any questions that you might have.
All right, thank you very much. I think I see Ms. Davis's parents here. Is she not available then tonight?
That's right. She's off actually in Ithaca doing a pre-vet course.
Oh, that's exciting. Okay, well, I did. She's watching my live stream. Okay, good. Well, I tell you, she's done a fantastic job advocating for her position, and I just wanted to make sure we gave her a chance, if she were so inclined, to speak again tonight. So, but I think we all do recall the great advocacy she's done to date, and most appreciated. So if there are no other speakers, we did have some earlier, and anyone is welcome to speak at this time if they'd like to fill out a speaker slip. Seeing none, the matter is closed to the public. Or
I
is
think
there?
there was one member of the public that wanted to
Oh,
speak.
you would like to
but
speak?
Apparently there.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know, I thought you were, go ahead, Ms. Walker.
You thought I worked here, right?
Yeah, well, I did.
I'm Kate Walker. I live at 200 West Columbia Street. I wanted to speak against the amendment of the ordinance, but Benjamin Hassan has already said most of the things I wanted to say. This expanding the allowance to keep exotic pets. Already, 1.5 million unwanted cats and dogs are destroyed in this country every year. And I don't think we need to add to that population of animals that are unwanted. You know, they're cute. Hedgehogs are cute. Chinchillas are beautiful, soft creatures, but they're not bred to be domesticated animals. Hedgehogs and chinchillas are nocturnal. They suffer when they are pets because they don't have the right social environment, they don't have the right physical environment. Hedgehogs tend to die early of obesity or other malnutrition-related diseases. They can't get enough exercise in captivity in the wild. They walk miles at night. It's in their nature to move a lot, and they shouldn't be kept in cages. Turtles and tortoises, both Naomi and Benjamin mentioned that people tend to release these pets into the wild when they can't keep them anymore. They take them on not realizing that this is a decades-long commitment. And they destroy habitat and outcompete our native species. And that's very detrimental to our waterways, and protecting our waterways is desperately important, as I think you know. Hermit crabs, you might say, well, there are millions of hermit crabs. What does it matter if a few of them live in our homes? But the hermit crab is a social animal. Most people don't realize that. They'll buy one and keep it. They'll buy a spare shell or two for it to grow into, thinking that it might survive that long. Most don't. Most of them live a few months instead of the 30 years they would live in the wild in their native habitats. Except that pet shops take the shells to sell with the crabs, and it causes a notorious hermit crab housing shortage. All of these factors, I think, are things that need to be considered when you talk about expanding, allowing people to keep pets. It's very nice, but it's destructive, and people can't keep on destroying every bit of the environment just because it entertains us to have a pet. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak tonight? Seeing none, the matter is closed to the public, and with council for discussion and consideration. Is there any comments that anyone wants to make or questions from council? Mr. Z.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that enough has been said about keeping exotic animals here, and they are part of the natural diversity of this planet. The human species has already wiped out 30% of the biodiversity on this planet, and so with regard to chinchillas, of the two species, one is endangered just because we've used them for coats, and the other one we've are now working on raising in farms in this country and elsewhere. Locally, we've had people release snakeheads into our waters, and pythons in Florida, iguanas. I could talk on and on about this, but exotic animals should not be considered pets for human entertainment. I think that says it all. They should not be considered for human entertainment. So I will vote against this, and I strongly urge my council members to do likewise. Thank you.
All right, other comments? Mr. Snyder.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to check City Council's interest. One of the commenters asked for a delay to further discuss this. This has come up in the summer. Is there any interest on the part of council to delay the consideration of this?
I'd like to vote tonight.
Okay, I'm not hearing any interest. So let me speak to the underlying issue. The arguments against the inclusion of new exotic animals are arguments which could be made against each and every animal we already permit. Animals that are mistreated are mistreated animals, whether they're exotic or whether they're dogs, cats, hamsters, gerbils, guinea pigs, ferrets, or other things that we permit already. So mistreatment is mistreatment. We're not authorizing that or suggesting that. The second thing is destroying the environment. Well, if that were the argument, then we wouldn't be permitting all the things that we already permit, because certainly the same argument could be made against them. Finally, I find it hard to argue against including hedgehogs and chinchillas as being allowed when we already include rats as being allowed. So it seems to me a fair number of our citizens have asked for inclusion. The ills that have been mentioned are ills that you could mention about things that we already permit. And I don't see anyone wanting to reverse people permitting to have dogs, cats, hamsters, gerbils, guinea pigs, ferrets, birds, goldfish and aquarium fish, snakes, rabbits, mice, and rats. So for that reason, I'll be voting for this ordinance. I think it's what our citizens want. But again, it's not an authorization to destroy the environment, and it's not an authorization to engage in mistreatment. Thank you.
All right, others, Ms. Hardy.
Thank you, Mr. Snyder. Thank you, Mayor. So I concur with Mr. Snyder's remarks. I do believe this is a mainstream, middle-of-the-road compromise proposal. We are not authorizing lions, tigers, or bears. I believe that it is appropriate for us to be responsive to many citizen requests. I went back to actually all of our council notes. So we first discussed this in February of 2018, then March of 2019 in work session, and most recently in June. So we've had lots of time to discuss this. And I think learning from our neighbors, staff reports is very compelling. So Fairfax County, with a population 80 times our size, engaged lots of specialists. And so when you read their reports, I think the report is very compelling that they did their homework, and I believe that it's appropriate for us to be consistent. I think the research by our student activists was also very thorough, and I think the argument to, again, legalize what are now very commonplace pets is appropriate. This is not the 90s, so despite being a child of the 90s, that was not 10 years ago. I was reminded that's actually more like 20 years ago now. And so I think a lot has changed in terms of what we consider commonplace pets. So I will also support amending the amendment tonight. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Lichtenhouse.
Thank you. I spoke extensively about this at the last meeting, so I'm not going to rehash all of that, but I'm in support of this. I have been for quite some time after reading the thorough information, very thorough information provided by Isabel and her team hedgehog that she brought into meeting. It's unfortunate that that grassroots movements couldn't be here in person, but she sounds like she's off doing some other incredible things. A lot of the arguments made by Councilwoman Hardy and Councilman Snyder, I second completely. If we begin outlawing animals based on the commercialization or monetization of trade of those animals or inhumane treatment by a few bad actors, we will have no domesticated animals in this city, animals, period. So I'm in support of it. I don't think that any of these animals that are listed are going to create a systemic, widespread risk to the health or the environment. So I'm in favor of expanding it based on the provision that's outlined on the screen here.
All right, thank you. Other comments?
So I appreciate the serious energy that's been devoted to this on both sides of this issue. I just had a feeling when it came up some months ago, some years ago now, that this was going to be a tougher call than maybe some folks thought it would be. You know, both sides make some compelling arguments. Those of us who have devoted a fair amount of their lives to the proper care and treatment of some of the animals that are included on this list fully appreciate how not everyone who comes home from the beach with a hermit crab does right by them. Our house is the exception, as I think I've mentioned before. My daughter came home from our high school graduation beach trip with 2 hermit crabs. And now, 11 years later, we still have 2 hermit crabs. We lost one of the original 2, but because they are social animals, we replaced it with another one. It was a adoptee. And it is a tremendous responsibility, even though it's, it's just a little silly crab. I mean, how could you get so worked up about that? But because you do have a responsibility as a human being to, treat all critters with respect. They've got their own tank, they've got their own humidifier, they've got their own fresh and salt water, they've got 15 different kinds of food that I now feed them because my daughter's in grad school across the country. And one thing I learned is you can't fly with hermit crabs, so I can't send them out to her. I get it that most people who are leaving Fenwick with, hermit crabs are not treating their hermit crabs that way. And yet, as others here have said, I'm not really sure why it is that we allow people who work 12 and 14-hour days to have dogs, for instance, because their dogs stay at home, and dogs are social animals, and okay, maybe they pay some money to walk them or whatever, but at any rate, it's just way above my pay grade to get into, these issues much more deeply than what we're being asked to do right here, which seems like a fairly reasonable, limited expansion, which is consistent with what our much larger jurisdictions that are our neighbors are doing. So I'm going to support this. As I said the last time we talked about it, I would like for staff, and I respect staff's opinion on this, to report back to us in some reasonable period of time, a year, and let us know if there is some extra burden on staff that's been brought on by us allowing more exotic animals. Because if it does get to be a financial burden on a small jurisdiction like ours, then that would persuade me that we are not like Arlington and Fairfax County, which maybe has the resources to deal with these things. But I feel like the environment has broadened. The number of people who are active on the internet and so forth and caring for animals, rehoming animals, is more widespread and more visible than it was even 10 years ago when we got our hermit crabs. And so I feel like there's a community out there that can address some of the legitimate problems that certainly existed in the past and hopefully improve conditions for all these animals, which is what we all ought to be about. I mean, there's something to be said for approving this and asking our citizens to treat their exotic animals appropriately and educating them in that direction. And I'd like to see us join with Arlington and Fairfax in that kind of an educational effort. So I'm going to support this. I do appreciate the arguments on both sides, though, and the seriousness that they've applied themselves to sharing them with us.
All right. Anyone else? Ms. Connolly, do you have anything you wanted to say? Or
Every time I hear someone speak about this, I think, oh, that's a really good point, and that's a really good point, and I agree with Dan, and I agree with Letty. So this is a really, as Mr. Duncan said, a really challenging issue because there's just so many different pieces. I am going to support it, but I take with great caution all the recommendations about reasons why it might not be a good idea.
All right, well, I'm up last. First off, let me start by saying I appreciate Ms. Davis's advocacy. As we talked about at our last meeting, it really is a lesson in civics and democracy and how communities should work, or at least how I think it should work in terms of discussing and resolving issues. So I want to thank her for that wherever you may be at this moment. Enjoy Ithaca, and we thank you for the good work you've done. I think there are some, I'm not going to support this motion or this proposed change, and I'll tell you why. I think some animals have evolved or co-evolved with humans, like dogs, but plenty of them haven't. And so what we're trying to do in some regards, some of the animals on this list are animals that belong with others of their species, and taking one out and putting it in a cage for most of the day when it might ordinarily roam over miles and miles and, live with others of its species, I just don't think that's right. as I said last time, just because we can have dominion over things doesn't mean we as humans should, or at least in my opinion. As to the argument that other jurisdictions are doing one thing or the other, I mean, ultimately, we got to think for ourselves, and we tend to do that on pretty much any issue that comes before us. And so I'm not persuaded by the fact that other places may do something differently than we do. We follow our own path here in Falls Church. So let me see if there's anything else. That's about all I've got. So that's my piece. Does anyone else have anything to say, or should we just move to a vote? All right, let's go ahead and do the vote. Madam Clerk?
Oh, we don't have a motion
Oh, I'm sorry, we
yet.
don't. All right, do we have a motion now? Does anyone want to make a motion?
I move to adopt TO 19-07 to amend Chapter 4, Section 4-3 of the City Code of the City of Falls Church to allow certain animals to be kept as pets in the city, as modified in the compromise language we discussed.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, Madam Clerk?
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Mr. Duncan?
Yes.
Ms. Hardy?
Yes.
Mr. Lickenhouse?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Z?
No.
Mayor Tarter?
No.
Motion carries 5-2. Thank you, council.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to the next item.
Yes, we have a first reading for TO 18-05, ordinance to amend Chapter 40, Taxation, Article 7, Tax Relief for Low-Income Elderly or Permanently and Totally Disabled, Sections 40-133 through 40-137.
Thank you. Mayor Tarter, members of the council, I'm Jody Acosta. I'm the city treasurer. And the tax relief program in the city is administered by the treasurer's office. So we started this process of looking at amending this ordinance about a year ago. And the city manager appointed a tax relief working group in October of last year. And I'd just like to take a moment to thank the members of that working group and name them here, recognize them here. Alyssa Mock, she's a member of our Human Services Advisory Board. Nancy Vincent, the city's Director of Housing and Human Services. Vice Mayor Mary Beth Connolly, who is our council liaison member. Falls Church citizen and taxpayer Tina Ehrman. My Chief Deputy Treasurer Nikki Weissmiller, and myself. We were the members of the working group. The focus of the working group was to review the city's existing tax relief program, compare it to programs in our neighboring jurisdictions, and make recommendations to improve the program. In so doing, we looked at income limits, asset limits, average assessed values of homes in the program, the application process, and our deferral program. We leaned pretty heavily on research that was done a year ago by Arlington County, our neighbors in Arlington County. They hired a national consultant and did a lot of research and reviewed these programs very thoroughly. After months of meetings and review, our working group is recommending the ordinance you have before you tonight, which contains the following changes from the previous ordinance. In the application process, we're going to use gross income, and there will be no deductions other than the existing disability deductions, which already exist in the previous ordinance, and the $10,000 income deduction allowed for non-spouse, non-owners, which is also in the previous ordinance. Asset limits, we are going to recommend lowering the asset limit to $400,000, which would bring our asset limit more in line with our neighbors. We feel that setting the limit at $400,000 would allow seniors to stay in their homes without having to completely liquidate their assets in order to maintain their residence. It would allow them to preserve some assets in case, their health does decline and they need to pay for care. We would also allow deferral only for applicants with assets between $400,000 and $540,000, which was our previous asset limit, whose income limits otherwise would meet the criteria for tax relief. We would grandfather 3 current recipients with assets over $400,000 because we felt strongly that our first responsibility to current recipients was to do no harm. We would allow a 2-year retroactive limit for veteran tax relief because it can sometimes take that long for a veteran to receive their approved paperwork from the VA. And this also aligns us with the state code regarding veteran tax exemptions. In our deferral program, we wanted to encourage more participation and possibly recoup some of the cost of abatements in the future. So we're recommending adopting 0% interest on deferred taxes beginning July 1, 2019. Existing deferral balances would remain, but they would accrue no further interest after July 1, 2019. We would also allow deferral for applicants whose homes have an assessed value of more than 125% of the city's average assessed value in any given year. These homes would not qualify for a tax abatement, but only for deferral. The working group is also recommending moving the tax relief year, moving tax relief from a calendar year to a fiscal year basis in order to align with the real estate billing year. Some of the questions that council raised in work session, we did some research on deferrals versus tax abatements and the effect that has on keeping seniors in their homes versus moving. Specifically, the Shan study from 2016, which states that deferral has little impact, but abatement has a significant impact on keeping seniors in their homes longer. We found articles and studies on reverse mortgages and tax deferral. Reverse mortgage companies typically do not allow a senior to defer their taxes because unpaid taxes represent a first priority lien on the property, and mortgage companies want to preserve their lien rights and equity in the home for their reverse mortgages. Finally, we found research on the benefits to a community of keeping seniors in their homes as part of their communities, which enrich those communities. And there's also a physical benefit. The services provided to an incoming family with children are more expensive than services provided to a senior who stay in their home. In conclusion, we're recommending what we call option 3 for from the different spreadsheet scenarios that we put in the packet. This option would provide 100% relief or tax abatement to those applicants who fall in the lowest income level of 0 to 40% of the area median income, which is defined annually by HUD. For applicants with 41 to 60% of area median income, they would receive 75% tax abatement. 61 to 80% of area median income would receive 50% tax abatement, and 81 to 100% of area median income would receive a deferral-only option. It was also raised in the work session if we should add a line in the ordinance for a time period review of the program. And after talking it over with our city attorney, Carol McCoskey, we felt we should not put that into the codified ordinance. She felt, and we agreed, that it could be addressed administratively with an annual report to council. For instance, for FY20, we'll know before the end of the year exactly how much the program is going to cost us. After we get all the applications back in, we should know by early December. And I'm happy to provide, an annual report to council or to the city manager, but I'm happy to provide a specific report to council. So we thought we could address it that way. So are there any questions? I'm happy to answer specific questions or anything in general.
Vice Mayor Connolly?
Thanks for your work on this, Ms. Acosta. You mentioned the sunset clause, or that the city attorney and you both recommend not including that in the ordinance. This is my 6th year on council, and I know this is the second time that we've done this. So I can't remember the time we did it before, but it seems like something that about every 4 years, it's a good thing to adjust. But it wasn't written in the previous ordinance either. We just knew as we went through that it was time to change things.
Yeah, the last time we looked at the ordinance and we actually changed it was in 2014.
Right, okay.
And we did increase the benefit then. But, there's a lot of talk about affordable housing and
right.
How can we, help seniors age in place. And so we felt it was time to revisit the ordinance on those grounds.
And this is something that you track all the time. So again, as you
every
just
year,
said,
yes.
it's something that we'll be able to know quickly what the effect is, and we'll be able to track it over time as well.
Yes.
Because you have all those individual records.
We do, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Other questions? Mr. Snyder?
Thanks. Will it be clear under the program that for those eligible, assuming that we vote for this, that those eligible, that eligibility is really for a year and that the city council has the authority to change the program if, for example, the costs were to rise very dramatically?
Yes.
Is that made clear to folks? It's not like a perpetual entitlement. It's really for 1 year, and it has to be renewed each year. Is that right?
That's correct, and that's covered in their application.
Right.
And all their communications that they get throughout the year from us.
Okay, thank
They
you.
know it's just for 1 year.
So you mentioned somebody being grandfathered or more than one person being grandfathered who didn't meet eligibility. Are you proposing a perpetual grandfathering of those individuals, or is it a limited duration?
It would be as long as they're in the program, and most of them are going to be spending down their assets anyway. But there are 3 people who they're over that $400,000 limit currently.
And how much over the $400,000 limit are they approximately?
One was like 40,000, one was 10,000, and one was at 500 and some thousand. So those were the 3.
I have to say, I'm certainly sympathetic to people who are already on the program, but I also am sympathetic to the idea that, look, if you don't meet the criteria, there's somebody else out there who doesn't meet the criteria, but you get to stay on forever. I mean, I could almost see a transition of a couple years. But I have to say, I feel a little bit that's sort of unfair to allow someone in perpetuity to just not meet eligibility requirements because at some point they did, we changed the rules, and forevermore they can be on the program. Most programs I'm aware of, government programs, if you stop meeting eligibility requirements, they don't just let you stay on forever. It's, okay, you got a year, you got 6 months. And so
Right.
I don't want to be hard to any person, but I'm going to put that out there as just a concern I have in general.
Okay.
Also, I definitely would agree this idea that we need to reevaluate this over time because it could be that it becomes significantly more expensive or whatever. And so I know you're talking about not putting it in the ordinance, but putting it in just some tickler for somebody to make sure they do that, and I'm sure that'll happen. But I think we need to stay on top of this because it could get very expensive potentially. And so that's something to think about. So anyway, those are the concerns I had initially. Anyone else have other? Mr. Lichtenhouse?
Yeah. To that point on the provision or adding a date, I am personally still uncomfortable with the math that went into us calculating exactly what the burden's going to be. And I know there's some subjectivity in terms of us not really being able to pinpoint what the cost is going to be. And I know that we say kind of informally it comes up, but for me, unless we put a date on the calendar, I'm uncomfortable voting in favor of it. So if it's an amendment that we need to pass to put a specific date, what is the date you said we'd be prepared for the next fiscal year? We'd have that information
We would know this December.
this December. So if it's to put it in here as December of 2019, I would propose that we amend this to put that specific date in there. That's the only way that I'm comfortable, knowing that it has to come in front of council. It can't just be a conversation, and then it's just kind of included as part of the budget conversation. I think that needs to be in there, at least personally for me, to be able to support this.
Counsel, if I might suggest, I don't think that a provision like that should go in the codified ordinance, but what we can do for second reading, if you direct us today, is we can have a second enactment clause, which doesn't become part of the code, but it is an ordinance, and it says that it could say that the treasurer shall review and report to council annually at the end of it, as of maybe January of each year, so it'll be after the information comes in from the prior year. But that way it's an ordinance, but it doesn't go in the code itself.
Why
But
wouldn't it be
goes in the
codified,
record.
Carol?
Well, only because if something came up that it couldn't happen at a particular time, you didn't have the information, you wouldn't want to have it sitting in the code, just as a general practice. That's not how, normally we wouldn't put those kinds of reviews in there. They're the kind of things that the staff would do, but they don't get written into the code. I mean, unless you want to do a sunset provision or something where the amendments end. But you probably don't want to do that because you'd want to develop something new.
So Carol, I'm comfortable with your proposal, but could we modify it so it's December of the ending calendar year, which would be well before we do budget guidance for the following fiscal year? Because I think that's the appropriate timing.
As long as that practically works for the treasurer, whatever date is fine with me. But we can put it in that way, and it doesn't reside within the written code that people read, but it's out there as an ordinance that would be tracked. And we can do that, we can, with your direction, we can add that to what's advertised and bring it to you on second reading.
That's fine. I just want to make sure that it is formally on our radar, on the agenda, that we have to have a full-throated conversation over the numbers and be able to make some decisions, so we're not having to parse this up in the middle of budget. Because again, I do not feel comfortable that we've pinpointed exactly what the cost of this is going to be.
Okay.
One last comment, just details associated with this, and some of in the red line version of the changes, under the subsection talking about AMI qualification, asset qualification, exemption versus deferral, what is supposed to be 400,000 is missing a zero. So under line 141 in that box.
Whoops. 141.
Mm-hmm. If you look at the box, you see where it's changed from 540,000 to 400. There's a zero missing.
It's in the third
intent,
row,
yeah.
first
Yep.
box,
Okay,
second
I
box
see
in
it.
the third row.
And then just a couple questions, a couple additional questions, Jody. In line 123 about the net combined financial worth, you may have addressed this in the last meeting, but I thought it was because it was redundancy, but then I didn't see it addressed anywhere else. But removing the net combined financial worth, removing the provision that an owner's relatives living in the dwelling would not be calculated as part of the net combined financial worth. Why did we strike that?
You know, Nikki pointed out when we were talking about this in work session that she does get all that information from the owner's relatives, and it does figure into this. So I'm not sure that it should be. I'm not sure we should strike it.
So I would ask that when this comes back for second reading, that provision is included. I think that anyone that is having the opportunity to live in that dwelling, if they're going to qualify, and that there's income and assets that allow
should
someone
be
to qualify,
included,
that it be included.
Agreed, okay.
Okay.
I thought I asked, I'm sorry. I thought I asked that same question, and the answer resided over on line 154 and 155. And that's as far as I can remember.
Well, that talks about the income exclusion. We exclude $10,000 of the relative's income who's living in the home. But he's talking about, you know, their assets and their total financial net worth. And we do take that into account. You know, when we ask them to fill out the
Yep.
application, they do put that information on the application. It's taken into account.
But line one, I'm sorry, I'm being dense, I guess. Line 124 speaks to the owner's relatives living in the dwelling. And so you're getting rid of that, and you're replacing it with language that allows.
123 through 127 addresses net worth, which is an asset calculation, whereas the
The other
provision from
addresses
149 to
income.
156 is based on
Right.
income.
Is that the
Right.
distinction?
Right, that's correct.
So-
Is that approach consistent with how everyone else calculates it? That you include everyone's assets, but you only include up to 10,000 of their income?
We exclude 10,000 of their
Exclude,
income. Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
So what I'm voting for here is going to strike the line at 124 in regards to assets.
Or strike the change.
Strike
The change was a deletion, so you're going to put that wording back in.
Right.
So you're continuing to take into account relatives' assets. And the language in line 155 says that you will allow basically a relative to have up to $10,000 of income. Any income above that will be counted against the applicant in
Yes.
determining their eligibility.
In determining the income eligibility, yes.
Okay, I think I understand. So is that?
Sorry about that.
So we don't really need to change any of the language that's here, we just need to understand that that's what we're talking about, is that right?
We need to, yeah, we need to remove, the part that's over on line 123, 124, we need to remove that, we need to unstrike it or, restore that language.
And then Jody, I just
Okay.
one more question. On line 183, it says the treasurer may require an applicant to answer questions under oath and/or to produce certified income tax returns. Why wouldn't it be shall?
Some people don't file a tax return.
Okay.
If their income's low enough, in that case, we have other means of income verification. But, so if they don't file a return, we can't get one from them, a tax return.
I would prefer that it say shall, because you've got two options. One, answer questions under oath, so if there isn't a tax return that's filed, you have the ability to provide that documentation or answers. But if you do have a certified certified federal income tax return, that should be provided.
Okay.
That's all the comments that I have.
My only other question for you is, I'm willing to accommodate whatever gets us to a unanimous vote, because I think the most important thing we can do in all of this is send a full-throated signal that, the city council of the city of Falls Church is cognizant that some of our older residents are struggling to hang on, and we are trying to bring ourselves more in line with our neighbors in terms of helping them do that. And we're trying to do it in a prudent and responsible way. So we've got some guardrails that we've put in here. My only concern with too many guardrails, and this is the question to you, is there's a paperwork burden associated with applying for this program. If somebody thinks, I may apply for it and the next year I may not get it, are you confident that if we proceed with this document that we have here, that you can have conversations with these people, and you are having these conversations? That's the good thing about small city here, is that you're talking with them. You can walk them through the application process and help them understand that although there's some language here that looks like, we're going to review it and we may pull it back and so forth, it's still worth their effort to make the application this first time if they're newly eligible. Are those the kind of conversations you have with people, do you find?
Yes, we do. We work very closely with people. We also help them fill out applications. If, sometimes a senior will say, well, I can't possibly, this is beyond me. I can't fill this out. It's too much. And Nikki's very good about it, as is Housing and Human Services, about helping them fill out the application. Or, we've sent HHS out. Leslyn Barrow's gone out to people's homes to help them do their tax return, so that they could then get it to us to qualify for the program. So yes, the answer is yes.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
All right, any other questions? I'm going to open it up to the public. Is there any member of the public that wishes to speak to this matter? Seeing none, the matter is closed to the public. Unless there's any other questions or comments, do we have a motion?
So the motion is to move to grant first reading to TO 18-05, schedule a public hearing and second reading for July 8th, 2019, and advertise the same according to law with, and help me out here, the language on line 124, beginning with "and," that of the owner's relatives living in the dwelling is unstruck and included.
And
And?
do you want to add that there will be a second enactment clause requiring review of the ordinance on an annual basis?
I don't, but as the maker of the motion, if somebody wants to improve my motion by doing that, I certainly wouldn't object.
I would make that motion.
I accept that.
All right, so you've included that in your motion then?
Yes, I accept that as part of my original motion.
One clarification for going through changes. I don't know if it's his motion or second motion, but changing the word from may to shall in 183. Is that something that Councilman Duncan could include in his motion? Does he feel comfortable with that?
I guess I would ask the treasurer if that's operable. Yes, I would accept that.
All right, so we have a motion. Do we have a second, Mr. Duncan's motion?
Second.
All right. Madam Clerk?
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Mr. Duncan?
Yes?
Ms. Hardy?
Yes.
Mr. Lickenhouse?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Z?
Yes.
Mayor Tarter?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, council.
All right, we're going to move on to the consent agenda, and I want to remind everyone, we do have a closed session tonight as well, so keep that in mind. So is there any member who wishes to remove any of the items from the consent agenda? If not, Mr. City Manager, will you read the consent agenda?
Mayor, members of council. The items on the consent calendar include appointments, the appointment of Jeff Peterson to the Library Board of Trustees, reappointment of Patrice Lepsich, Health Systems Agency of Northern Virginia, and the reappointment of Robert Botelata to the Virginia Workforce Investment Board. Item to authorize the city manager on behalf of the city to ratify past expenditures and amend the contract with Central Services LLC for custodial services to expend up to $120,000 per fiscal year and to renew the contract for a period for up to 3 additional one-year terms subject to annual appropriations. This is the custodial services contract that covers City Hall, for the library, for Aurora House, and for the property yard. Authorization for the Mary Riley Stiles Library to issue a purchase order to Baker and Taylor in the amount of $130,000 for library books, audiobooks, compact discs, and DVDs for the library. Item 4 is authorization for the Mary Riley Stiles Library to issue a purchase order to Overdrive in an amount not to exceed $220,000 for the purchase of e-books. And we are increasing our e-books collection in light of the move to a transitional space at TGA Elementary School, and also in light of their growing popularity. And then lastly, on consent is resolution to approve the city's participation in the Virginia Risk Sharing Association for FY 2020 and to authorize the risk manager, who is Cindy Mester, to sign the updated master agreement and fiscal year 2020 renewal with an annual premium cost not to exceed $405,000. This amount was the amount in the city budget.
All right. Unless anyone wants to remove any of those items.
Mr. Mayor, I'm not moving to remove any of the items, but I do have a question for the city attorney. I have no way of knowing whether any of the members of the association that I work with during the day may reinsure the Virginia risk. I have no idea. So how can I vote on this? Do I need to abstain from it, or I'm sorry to get into this?
It's probably the
but,
easiest
you
just to
know.
abstain. I mean,
You can abstain. My initial reaction is I think that you don't have a personal interest in this matter, even if you work with somebody who may have some personal interest, and that doesn't count for the Virginia Conflicts of Interest Act, but if you prefer to abstain on that matter, you could.
Okay, fine.
It's likely to pass without your vote, so. All right, so do we have a motion?
Mayor, move approval of all the items on the consent calendar.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any member of the public wish to speak to these items? Seeing none, the matter is closed to the public. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention?
One abstention.
One
Thanks.
abstention. All right, great. So let's move on to business not on the agenda. Is there any business not on the agenda? Any standing? Okay. Vice Mayor Connolly?
Mr. Shields, my question is about July 5th, and I know our staff does not officially have that day off as a holiday because we follow state holidays, and I'm just wondering what the protocol is, or if there's a thought on council that it would be good to give staff off after they've endured this year of moving and work so hard. I'm just wondering what others think about that, and I would like to make a motion to do that.
Well, thank you, Vice Mayor Connolly. Just a bit of background on this. The Employee Advisory Council had asked me about this maybe 2 months ago, and I had responded by saying that I didn't think I would recommend taking the 5th off. None of the other surrounding jurisdictions were doing so, and so that's how I responded. Since that time, Fairfax County has announced that they are taking the 5th off, and the EAC has renewed their petition to me just this week, and so I've not shared that with council. If it were the council's desire to do this, it could be done by motion. By city code, we follow the state holiday schedule, and the state, to the best of my knowledge, is not taking off on the 5th as a holiday. If I recall, and I don't have this number, maybe Ms. Bawa knows it off the top of her head, or Ms. Mester, but when we do take a holiday, there is a cost, and the cost is for our police officers and those employees that must work. They then get paid time and a half for the vacation time. And so if I recall correctly, that is about $7,000 when we do that. So that would be the fiscal impact of that action. Be happy to answer any questions. I will say it would be, I'm sure, well received by employees, but it has been my response to employees that it was not going to be my personal recommendation. So that's what I've communicated to employees up to this point.
Mayor, it's too early in the season to say bah humbug, so I would be in favor of giving them the day off.
Opinions?
Let's not ruin the good mood from tonight, right?
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, the private sector, at least my experience, is generally doing this as well. I think there's a realization that productivity is probably not going to be that great anyway. So, and this gives up people an opportunity to spend quality time with their families. We demand a lot of our employees. This seems to me the least we can do.
All right, so do we need to make a motion? Is that how this would happen?
Yes.
All right, does someone like to make a motion?
So I'll move to declare July 5th, 2019 employee holiday.
Second.
So you want to take the 5th? Is that what you're?
I'll take the 5th on that.
You like that, didn't you? So what, do we have a second?
Mr. Z seconded.
All right, we do have a second. Any public comment? Seeing none, the matter is closed to the public. Madam Clerk?
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Mr. Duncan?
Yes.
Ms. Hardy?
Yes.
Mr. Lickenhouse?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yeah.
Mr. Z?
Yes.
Mayor Tarter?
Yep.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much, council.
All right. Any standing regional committee or council liaison reports that need to be made right now? Any council member comments? Are there any minutes that we need to approve right now? Doesn't look like it.
I had a comment.
All right.
Oh, so I was just reflecting on our agenda tonight. So this is definitely more touchy-feely than I normally am. Those who know about my comments are normally more down to business. But between all the work involved in opening City Hall, the Welcoming Falls Church grassroots effort we heard about, kind of the long years of dedicated public service by our employees and celebration of our LGBT community this weekend, and passing kind of first reading tax relief for our most vulnerable senior population, and being responsive to citizen needs, whether it's hedgehogs or sidewalks. That really just reflected a really great heart that I think this community has. And so I was just really proud to be up here tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there other comments that folks want to make? We do have a closed session proposed for this evening.
I have one comment.
All
I
right.
don't know if anyone else wanted to, but this is the beginning of ozone season, and people should be encouraged not to idle their vehicles, do whatever they can do to avoid using their private vehicles. This is particularly important now in view of the federal government's retrenchment from the air quality standards, where more and more are going to be imposed upon regions and localities to step up to try to maintain the absolute fantastic progress that we've made in terms of clean air. Who would ever imagine that clean air would become a controversial political issue? But it is, and so we're going to keep doing our best and just call on citizens to do everything we can collectively to do this. Thanks.
On the smaller scale, much smaller, Mr. Manager, were you too busy today to find out what happened at the traffic signal at northbound Southwest Street, which went wacky and had to cause the closing of the street for a while, and I guess it got itself resolved. There's been some timing issues on that signal that Mr. Woodfield told me about, were caused by the microburst, and they were going to go back in and fix them. It basically was running 10 seconds going northbound and 30 or 40 seconds for every other, so there was a backup of traffic. Were you too busy today to hear about this, or?
There definitely was a backup to the traffic. We had that intersection closed down. Let me provide a report to the council on exactly what did happen. The council has allocated funds in the budget this year and next year with the prioritization of our signals, and I'll give you a report on how we're putting that money to work on this intersection and other intersections.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Lichtenhouse?
Yep. Mr. Shields, any update on sidewalk grinding for that section of Jackson Street between Seton and Timber?
If I could get back with you on that
Okay.
personally, I don't have an update at this point.
Thanks.
All right, unless there's anything else, let's move on to our closed session. I'm going to go ahead upon a motion made by Councilmember,
Connolly.
seconded by Councilmember,
Hardy.
and passed by a vote of City Council. Council went into closed session pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3211A1 for discussion and consideration of the performance and salaries of specific appointees of City Council, in particular the city clerk, city manager, and city attorney. Councilmember Connolly?
Yes.
Duncan?
Yes.
Hardy?
Yes.
Lichtenhouse?
Yes.
Snyder?
Yeah.
Z?
Yes.
Tarter? Yep. All right, so we're going into closed session. We thank you all for coming out this evening for this great celebration, and we will see you very soon in here. Thank you. Upon a motion made by council, we're coming out of closed
Connolly.
session now.
Connolly.
Upon a motion made by Councilmember Connolly, second by
Duncan.
Duncan, and passed by a vote of City Council. Council reconvened in open session. Councilmember Connolly.
Yes.
Duncan.
Yes.
Hardy.
Yes.
Lichtenhouse.
Yes.
Snyder.
Yeah.
Z.
Yes.
Tarter. Yep. All right. It is. We have no idea what time it is. What time is it? 10:40. All right. This is our certification upon a motion made by Councilmember,
Duncan.
seconded by Councilmember,
Connolly.
and passed upon affirmative roll call vote in open session. It was certified that only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed session or meeting by the City Council. Councilmember Connolly.
Yes.
Duncan?
Yes.
Hardy?
Yes.
Lichtenhouse?
Yes.
Snyder?
Yeah.
Z?
Yes.
Tarter? Yep. All right. So is there anything else to be said tonight?
Move to adjourn.
All right, let's do it. We are adjourned in our new meeting.